arrest warrant of Benjamin Netanyahu, also with the Minister of Defense there, Mr. Gallant, and also the leader of Hamas. We have reactions also from President Biden, who says that particular pronouncement by the ICC is outrageous, and also they're questioning the limits of the ICC court as far as their jurisdiction is concerned, bearing the fact that we know that Israel is not party or is not ratified to the Rome Statutes as well. Let's just begin from there, Dr. Mustafa, briefly. The reactions and also how also Benjamin has reacted to this particular arrest.
Yeah, Diba, let me start by saying this, that the shedding of the Palestinian blood is helping the world to see the world in red and white. The pervasive hypocrisy and double standards, particularly by the West. I watched Karim Khan last night. This was on CNN. I think this was taken earlier in the day or the day before. And this is what he said, if you watched. And he said that a very senior government official from the West told him not to bother, that ICC is created for Africans, and I quote, and thugs like Putin. This is what he said last night. You can get that clip. And what does that tell you? That this court, Karim Khan himself, a prosecutor, was confirming that this court was created for Africa and other people, and as a tool to continue Western domination in the world. Mm-hmm. And this is coming up very clearly. It's you don't even need to be a lawyer today to know that there have been massive war crimes committed against the Palestinian people, massive crimes against humanity committed against the Palestinian people from October 7th when Israel attacked Gaza. And what Karim Khan has basically done is to just look at evidence, which is there. We see it on television. We see it, it's the evidence is there. And if, first of all, Karim must have been very brave to do this, because what he's doing is basically redeeming the ICC and the ICC to make it be the court that it is supposed to be. And I hope this process will be concluded to the logical end. People like Milosevic, typical face of evil in the 1990s, was indicted when he was president, and he committed suicide at The Hague. But a sitting head of state at some point will have to answer for the crimes against humanity and the war crimes that they are committing against innocent people.
Yes, Honorable Professor Kagwanja, we have the U.S. now warning that, or was particularly perturbed, I should say, about Khan's use of CNN, as just Dr. Mustafa has announced, or has actually mentioned, that how can it use CNN to announce a court business? And we have Matthew Miller, who is the State Department's spokesperson, saying it's an unusual thing for a prosecutor to make an initial arrest announcement on television, not in a public document.
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to congratulate Karim Khan for his courage and bravery in venturing that way. Hopefully, if the world order stays the way it is, I don't think he has a very bright future, because you don't venture into the territory of Israel without finding some vengeance of some form or another, if we know. But thanks God, the world order is changing a little bit, and therefore Karim Khan is one of those who are pushing the frontiers of the new order by basically venturing into an area where you not venture. The fact that Hitler existed and Hitler did the damage he did in the Holocaust cannot be an excuse 70 years later for similar situations, as Netanyahu is trying to put it here, and calling everybody in the world anti-Semitic is simply a way of camouflaging serious crimes that have been done. I think what is good in Khan's indictment is that it's balanced. He's not just indicted the Israelis, he has also indicted Hamas. And this is this is the argument that the world has been making, that what the Palestinians are doing and what the Israelis are doing is not good in the eyes of humanity. And therefore, they need to stop it. And therefore, a solution needs to be found. That has been the broad sense in which this statement has been made. So by indicting the two sides, basically, if it is taken seriously, then it is likely to stop the war. And the ICC, in this particular case, will bring its weight to bear on the participants to stop the war. What is strange is America's response. Because in the case of Africa, every case in Africa, America supported. The indictment of Babo, a former president in Cote d'Ivoire, right? The appointment of Omar al-Bashir, even talking about taking Gaddafi's sons to The Hague. So in other words, this is the code for the Wild West, or in the American slang, the wild West. Now the Wild Africa. I think that's how it is conceived in the psychology, the American politics. That this is the African court. If it has to be extended, then it has to go to the wild Europe, which is Eastern Europe. When you talk philosophy, for many Europeans, Eastern Europe is not Europe. It is the wild part of Europe. And therefore, it is in order to do that. But the moment you venture out of that, then you go to Latin America, which is another part of the wild Europe. So I think Karim Khan is removing that kind of thing and universalizing the court. And I think this case is going to be quoted for a long, long, long time about what Karim Khan did. And I think however you want to look at it, this is the end of Netanyahu. Because his moral basis now is no longer there.
Right, thank you. Let's hear from, briefly, from Dr. Kanenje.
This is significant. And because there has always been a perception, which is based actually in fact, that ICC has largely been targeting countries that are weaker. And the collective West has generally supported those kind of indictments, whether it's Bashir and Prof, you left out ourselves, Kenya. You understand?
I see that.
we were part of that.
Yes.
And so we understand what it means. But Netanyahu is trying to, first of all, raise a race card by mentioning about Khan's bloodline notwithstanding. Meaning he's doing that because he's not one of us, and of course he hates us because his bloodline perhaps is related to somebody else. Now, we know that you had a Holocaust that did happen within the context of war, 1939 to 1945. That does not justify you going to grab someone else's land and displacing them, 95% of it. Number two, the worst crime, but I'm going to make this statement again, against humanity was not the death of Jews in the Second World War, 6 million of them within the context of war, was the 400 years of slavery and displacement for Africans in the Americas and across the Atlantic. Tens of millions of them were killed and maimed. The worst crimes was the killing of 10 million Congolese by Belgian Congo, the kingdom. Who talks about that? Worst crime against humanity is there's so many evil things that have been committed, especially against the black people of color around the world, that no one talks about. As we are speaking, between 2000 and 2015, more than 6 million Congolese died in DRC. Who is talking about that? So Netanyahu should stop this kind of garbage. But what he's trying to do, because he's been riding on the ignorancy and complacency and complicity, especially of the evangelical right in the United States, and the kind of ideology and propaganda has actually spread across the world about the chosen people. There is nothing chosen about the government of Israel. The world has risen up not against the Jewish people, who are good. I do have friends, I've had students who are Jewish people. The world is rising up against the government and of Benjamin Netanyahu within Israel. Even the former president, like Ohio Barak, they actually blame him for what is happening. And so for us to start somehow thinking this anti-Semitism just because in the United States, the leading ranking Democrat, Jack Schumer, rose to the floor, is the highest ranking Democrat in the Senate, and called out Netanyahu and said it is time for Netanyahu to go because what he's doing is unacceptable. Bernie Sanders, who is the first highest ranking Democrat, in fact, Jewish American to actually run for president and came close to winning the primary, has been calling him out, has been calling this act a genocide. There's nothing anti-Semitic about that. And the last time I checked, by the way, for many Kenyans who might not know, Arabs are also Semites. So the Palestinians you're killing are also Semites. Correct. So how can you be anti-Semitic against yourself? So that is garbage. And please, give us a break.
Right. Let's hear from
well,
Dr. Mbongi.
I understand the passion and the energy with which Hassan is doing this. But what Karim Khan did is familiar to us in Kenya here. He was a lawyer of one of the Kenyans accused in the ICC. It's bold. It's actually what we have been looking forward to. I've said in this forum before that human life is so precious, so sacrosanct, that nobody has an entitlement to take it. And that life is either the life of the Palestinians, poor women and children who are being butchered every other day. It's the life of the Jews who were killed by Hamas. I like the idea that Imran Khan has gone both ways. The stance of Israel is based on religious fundamentalism that has no place in our modern world. Making it so difficult to say anything against what the government of Israel is doing and calling it anti-Semitism is not the direction that we will want to go. The question I want to raise is, yes, Karim has done this. How successful is it going to be, given what the Americans have done? And Prof. Kawanja, I don't know whether it's you or Hassan who said you are surprised. I'm not surprised that the Americans have taken this direction. It was expected, actually. America's foreign policy towards Israel it doesn't need any thinking. It's actually known that they will go that direction. America has already poured cold water on what Khan did. And we will be watching to see whether this indictment will go the direction of his predecessors, Bensouda and Ocampo. We know that they released the arrest warrant for Omar Bazil. It didn't go very far. We have now one for Vladimir Putin, which has not materialized really. But it symbolically, what Khan did is something that is applaudable and will be here for a long time. I'm sure looking 50 years from today, as a historian, we'll be looking back and saying, at least for once, the ICC prosecutor did something that needs to be applauded.
All right, we want to just leave it at that. We can get closing remarks from you, Dr. Mustafa, briefly.
Yeah, just to say that, Dibal, we, in the context of the President's state visit to the United States of America, I know we are not receiving much information back, and as Professor Kagwanja and colleagues have been saying, and we hope that today, tomorrow, and the day after, when he's concluding his state visit to the U.S., that we will get a proper summary of what has been done, what has been signed, so that we can gauge and discuss this better if this state visit has been successful. We think, based on the itinerary and agenda that has been provided publicly, that this is a very important a visit by our president to the United States of America, and we hope that we can get all the details, discuss this, and look at the substance of the visit itself.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we want to go back to post-tomorrow, and I think I want to say that in Mount Kenya, we need to basically consolidate our position, get one party, and put our politics in order, rather than basically get into agenda that's going to isolate the region from the rest of the country, and that's going to radicalize the politics of this country against the region, back to 41 against 1. It is not helpful. We can gain all the things we want to gain without necessarily radicalizing our politics against the others.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you. Dr. Hassan Kanenje.
I think one thing that is going to be key, and as we try to move forward as a country, we have our own internal dynamics. But with regard in terms of our current engagement, especially the President of the United States, it's going to be very keen for us to take stock. There is a likelihood there's going to be change in Washington in November this year. It is not a given, but there is a high chance that we may have that kind of shift. Now, as a country, the kind of things we're going to secure in this arrangement, how are we going to make sure that we can actually protect them, especially if they're going to profit our country going forward, in case there's going to be a shift. And so let's come back home and focus a lot more substantive kind of engagements and issues, as opposed to kind of nitpicking on tiny little things that sometimes distracts from the general overall agenda that's supposed to ensure prosperity and development.
Right. Let's hear from...
Thank you, Dipal. Let me go to the ancestral values of my people. We say in my village, and this is in Ekebusi, that moitike minyo tanga na moimo kaigo. Moitike minyo tanga na moimo kaigo. Translated to English is the worth of a hunter is actually charged by what he comes with from his hunting expedition. The worth of our president's trip to the United States will be charged by what he comes with, tangible, that will benefit the people of Kenya and our development.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, they had the sentiments of course, our panelists regarding what is happening currently as far as geopolitics, foreign policy, diplomacy, and security is concerned. And I just also want to show you briefly, before we introduce just an interview here, what is on the publications. That is the Time magazine. Dr. Kanenje was talking about November, and Time magazine is holding this, If He Wins, right? Time magazine is having a title, If He Wins, by Eric Cortelesa. If he wins, so it's not about if. Yeah, no, I thought it is when. If, it is when he wins. All right, this is what is on the latest Time magazine. It's not and if. Also looking at The Economist, is America dictator-proof? That is a probing question there. And you can grab a copy for that. An American startup boom, China, Russia, and the gray zone, the PJP's power vacuum. Also, that is another story that you will follow. The Newsweek, battle scars. What Ukraine war has taught us about PTSD. That is what is on the front page of the Newsweek as well. Now, President William Ruto recently participated in the CEO's summit in Kigali, Rwanda. During the event, he engaged in a discussion with CNBC's Abi Agena. Agena initiated the interview by inquiring whether Kenya is experiencing debt distress. And we want to leave you with this particular conversation between him and President William Ruto.
We believe that a fairer, much more nimble, much more agile international financial architecture is necessary. Initially, when we pushed for this conversation, it looked far-fetched. I can confirm to you today that everybody has come round, and the international community agree with us, from the US to Europe to China, that in fact, the current international financial architecture is not fair. Some countries access development resources at 1%, others at 10%. And that is 10 times. So we're saying on average, some countries access development resources 5 times more than in other countries. And because of that realization, and because it's now accepted globally that there is something wrong and there is need to recalibrate the international financial architecture, we have put proposals on the table. For example, at the Africa Climate Summit, we said we must have a transition. We must unlock the huge potential of renewable energy so that we can power the engines of green industrialization in our continent using the enormous renewable energy resources that are in our continent. And Kenya is a case in point.
Yes.
90% of our energy is renewable. We must use the huge resources we have to create energy security, both for, not energy, but food security for Africa and for the globe, using 65% of our arable uncultivated land, using our human capital, 1.4 billion people market, headed to 2.5 by 2050. 40% of the world's workforce will be from our continent, and we will have the largest single market by 2050. So that tells you that Africa is not just a continent that is victim to climate change. Africa presents a major opportunity. And in fact, we're moving from potential to opportunity to investment. Yeah. And that is the conversation we want to have with the rest of the globe. Where are we now? I think in COP28, it was agreed that it is no longer an argument what we were saying. Green growth is the future.
Certainly.
And therefore, energy face down was agreed in COP28, lending credence to our position at the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi, that is the direction we wanted. Number two, we have already come round to the international financial architecture. Today, we are discussing three things as part of that process. Number one, we are discussing replenishment of IDA, which is the concessionary window of the World Bank. It is one of the conversations that I will be carrying to the United States, for United States to lead the way in making sure that the rest of the world puts their resources in concessionary financing around the World Bank, because that way we can leverage 3-4 times on the resources they put in there, and we can get resources at scale, concessional resources with long-term, 40 years of funding. That is one. Number two, we have already agreed with the IMF that using the SDRs that were 650 billion that were issued to countries that did not need those resources. Today, there is a mechanism that is being worked out with Africa Development Bank to rechannel those resources so that it can get to the countries that truly deserve concessionally funding in the developing world. And this month, end of this month, on the 29th to be specific, we will be having a conversation at the summit of the Africa Development Bank in Nairobi to look at those instruments, the new instruments that will facilitate countries like Kenya and others to access development resources that are concessionary. Yeah. And I can say confidently that we made our case and we are providing a way into the future.
Quite elaborate indeed, Mr. President. And speaking to the bigger conversation around taxation, it remains a very hot subject right now, even as countries are tightening their belts to be able to raise domestic resources. This is leaving a bitter taste in the mouths of citizens. And how are you looking to navigate through this, considering that on one hand, you want to tighten and reduce the debt trap? On the other hand, you have to ask the citizens to bear the brunt.
You see, for us to pull ourselves out of the debt overhang that is hanging over maybe 28 different countries in our continent, we have to do, in my opinion, 4 things. Negotiate with our development partners for concessionary financing in the manner in which I have suggested to you, using SDRs, using IDA and other concessional windows, building huge reserves around that. Number two is to mobilize domestic financing, to mobilize domestic resources, using our own instruments. I mean, you have to be realistic that as you look for resources from elsewhere, you must also look at how do you mobilize resources domestic in your domestic using taxes. You know, taxes that are sensitive, that do not undermine your capability to grow, but you move taxation from production, you move taxation to consumption. You tax the consumption end and support the production end. And then number three, we need to provide more incentives for manufacturing, for value addition, for industrialization, so that we can create more exports. That way, we energize our economies. And number four, as I said earlier, we need to deal with the challenge of wastage, of pilferage, of theft, and corruption. We must make sure that every shilling counts for the taxpayer. So these are the four things that I think, top of my mind, we need to do to pull our countries away from the debt situation we're in.
And Mr. President, are you ready to crack the whip, especially on government officials who are caught up in this pilferage that you talked about and the wastage? Any actions we are seeing going forward?
Three things. If you look at our budget, we are putting more money in our criminal justice system. We are putting more money in the judiciary. We are putting more money in the anti-corruption agency. We are putting more money in the criminal investigation department. We are putting more money in ensuring that we build an ecosystem that makes sure that our criminal justice system has the necessary capabilities to deal expeditiously with every matter of corruption. And we have agreed with the judiciary that there is need for us to listen to. Justice delayed is justice denied. And thirdly, fourthly, let me put it, we are also creating infrastructure around policy to make sure that we support alternative voices. I just operationalized the Public Benefits Organizations Act that gives the civil society and other actors voice on making sure that they hold government to account, that they bring out issues that government they participate. We create more citizens' participation in governance. We have a constitutional principle that says public participation is a must.
Yeah.
We are expanding that space by making sure that civil society organizations can hold government to account. They can take government to court. They can challenge, government interventions if they don't meet the threshold of what the public wants. So we are building an ecosystem of accountability, making sure that government is accountable, using the criminal justice system, using the civil society, making sure that we run an open government, and making sure that citizens get value for the resources that they put at the disposal of government.
And Mr. President, as we head to the tail end of this conversation, of course, we'll be connecting with you in Nairobi, Kenya for the AFDB meetings. And I do know that you have a very busy diary as you head out to the US. What will be your message to investors, as well as there's been a lot of backlash back home when you're looking at some of the key measures you decided to take around sending police to Haiti. How will this be shaping your agenda as you go to the US?
For your information, the subject of the US is going to be a very important and significant engagement for me, for Kenya, and for our continent, because we will be discussing with the US three very fundamental things. We will be discussing with the US how they can work with us in terms of our economy. The US to lead the way in ensuring that the rest of the international financial architecture, which they have quite some significant say, is reformed to reflect the aspirations of fairness, which I believe the US believe in.
Yeah.
Fairness, it must be also democratic. They believe in democracy. So we need the international financial architecture to be democratic. Countries in the global south must have a say. We need to expand the representation in these organizations. And this is a conversation that will inform some of the conversations I'm going to have with the US. Number two is to make sure that we discuss the democratic project. How do we work together to make sure that progressively we have a much more democratic Africa, an Africa that whose aspirations can be attained by its citizens, and thirdly, how we can work with the US for the stability of our continent, making sure that it is true. We have seen the concern of the US in Gaza. We have seen the concern of the US in Ukraine. We want to see the same commitment of the US and other friends in Africa. We have conflict in Somalia. We have conflict in Sudan. We have issues in DRC. How do we stabilize this continent together? So peace and stability is going to be a major subject. The economy is going to be another subject. And of course, the most important one is how do we jointly develop infrastructure, whether it is road rail, whether it is digital technology infrastructure, or indeed infrastructure that will support our own growth. These are the subjects, including market infrastructure. One of the subjects I will be having a conversation about is the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act that will provide quota-free, duty-free access of African finished goods into the American market. So these are the conversations we are going to have to support our economy, to create stability in our continent, and to also make sure that we get a financial architecture that will support our progress. And on the matter of Haiti, Haiti is not as unpopular as you think. Mm-hmm. In fact, our forces have been raring to go because Kenya is a responsible global citizen. Kenya is not going to start by sending troops to Haiti. Kenya has been here for the last 35 years. Kenya has participated in 49 such initiatives. We have been from Kosovo to Liberia to Namibia to many other places, in 49 different places. Haiti is just going to be one of them. Yeah. And it is because we have the requisite experience, and we believe that threat to security anywhere is threat to security everywhere. Mm-hmm. The same way we will deploy troops to look after our own women and children in the North Rift in Kenya is the same way we are available to work with the rest of the international community to deploy our police to secure women and children in Haiti. Haiti asked for Kenya's support. Kenya will show up and support the women, the children, the people of Haiti. And we are working with others